Revenge doesn't always come in fire and fury. Sometimes it arrives in silence, in a single word that echoes louder than any rant ever could. For Caitlin Clark, her revenge wasn't measured in Twitter clapbacks or cutting post-game interviews. It came in the quiet rejection of a man who once dismissed her, a man who ruled women's basketball like a king on his throne. She didn't need to shout. She didn't need to prove herself with insults. All she had to do was say no. No to Geno Auriemma, no to UConn's dynasty. No to the $1 million olive branch that came crawling back years too late. And in that whisper of defiance, an empire crumbled. On the surface, her refusal made no sense. Who turns down a contract north of $1 million for just 8 weeks of basketball? To the outside world, it looked reckless. But this wasn't about money. This was about history, about arrogance, about disrespect. Years earlier, when Clark was just a kid in Iowa dreaming of playing at the pinnacle of women's basketball, UConn was everything. It was the mountaintop, the kingdom of legends like Diana Taurasi, Maya Moore, and Breanna Stewart. Any girl growing up in America knew if UConn called, you answered. But that call never came. Geno never dialed her number. He never called her parents, never reached out, never even bothered to send a note through her AAU coach. For the greatest recruiter the sport had ever known, that silence was deafening. And it wasn't an accident. It was a choice. UConn already had Paige Buchers, Geno said. He didn't want 2-point guards. On paper, fine. But then came the insult that Clark would never forget. Geno told the media that if Caitlin really wanted to be a Husky, she should have called him. Imagine that. The man who built his empire on identifying generational talent before anyone else decided Caitlin Clark wasn't worth the effort. Instead, he shifted the responsibility onto a teenager to chase him. That wasn't just a recruiting miss. It was an act of arrogance, the kind of slight that buries itself deep in memory. Clark filed it away, not with rage, but with resolve. If he wouldn't believe in her, she'd find someone who did, and so she chose Iowa. To most outsiders, it looked like settling, a consolation prize compared to the grandeur of UConn's banners and mystique. But for Clark, Iowa was freedom. At UConn, she would have been Paige's shadow, Geno's afterthought. At Iowa, she was the centerpiece, the chosen one. From the moment she stepped on the floor in Iowa City, she began writing a story too big for even Geno to ignore. Every Logo 3 was a statement. Every sellout crowd was a receipt. Every shattered ratings record was a reminder. You missed this. Yet Geno couldn't help himself. Instead of humility, he doubled down. When asked about her rise, he brushed her off with smug sound bites. He called her a driveway player, as if her dominance was just a trick of circumstance. He tethered her success to Paige Buchers, dropping comparisons every chance he got. If Caitlin was fearless, well, so was Paige. If Caitlin was a fan magnet, Paige had been too. It wasn't analysis, it was strategy. By attaching Clark to his own players, he tried to keep himself in the spotlight. He wanted the world to believe she wasn't rewriting the game, she was just another page in his book. But backhanded compliments can't hide insecurity. Fans noticed. Analysts noticed. Other coaches noticed. They saw through the act. Clark didn't need qualifiers. She was selling out Madison Square Garden, dragging the WNBA into mainstream relevance, drawing more attention than entire franchises. Ordinary players don't do that. Clark wasn't ordinary, and the more Geno tried to downplay her, the more obvious his insecurity became. Eventually, the mask slipped. In June 2024, during an interview on The Dan Patrick Show, Geno crossed a line he could never uncross. He didn't just question Caitlin Clark. He went after her fans. He called them delusional. He said they were clueless about the game. He even claimed they were damaging women's basketball by believing she could compete for MVP as a rookie. Think about that. Millions of new fans had just poured into the sport because of Caitlin. Families in jerseys, kids lining up for autographs, casual viewers tuning into WNBA broadcasts for the first time. And Geno's response wasn't gratitude, it was contempt. This wasn't coaching analysis. It wasn't critique. It was personal. He wasn't just dismissing Caitlin. He was dismissing the movement around her, the very lifeblood that had elevated women's basketball to levels unseen. And because it came from Geno Auriemma, his words carried weight. That's what made them dangerous. But the beauty of Clark's revenge is that she didn't clap back. She didn't waste a word. She let her game do the talking. Rookie of the Year, all WNBA first team, 4th in MVP voting, exactly where her supposedly delusional fans predicted she'd land. The prophecy Geno mocked became reality, and with it, his credibility cracked. It wasn't just a victory for Clark, it was vindication for her fans, the very people Geno had insulted. Every parent who drove their kid across states to see her, every casual fan who tuned in, every young girl who stayed up late to watch her play, they were right. Geno was wrong. And the cruelest twist? Clark never even mentioned his name. She didn't gloat, didn't clap back, didn't acknowledge him at all. She just kept winning, and in doing so, she lived rent-free in his head. By then, words weren't enough. Geno had tried everything, ignoring her as a recruit, brushing off her rise, undermining her fans, tethering her to Paige. None of it worked. Clark kept climbing, and his influence kept shrinking. So he pivoted. If he couldn't control the narrative with his mouth, maybe he could do it with money. Enter Unrivaled, the 3-on-3 women's league backed by Breanna Stewart and Nafisa Collier, with Geno quietly invested behind the curtain. The league had ambition, it had funding, but it didn't have a face. And only one face could give it instant legitimacy: Caitlin Clark. That's when desperation revealed itself. Reports confirmed Unrivaled offered Clark over $1 million for an 8-week season, one of the richest deals ever offered in women's basketball. Let that sink in. The same man who once refused to even call her as a teenager was now dangling 7 figures, practically begging her to save his project. The same man who told the world her hype wasn't real was now trying to monetize it. The same man who mocked her fans as delusional now needed those same fans to buy his tickets and stream his games. But Clark wasn't fooled. To her, that contract wasn't opportunity, it was a trap. A desperate attempt by Geno to reattach her legacy to his name. If she signed, he could rewrite the story, spin her stardom as still tied to his empire. But Clark saw it for what it was, and her answer was swift, simple, devastating. No. No drama. No theatrics. No explanations. Just one word that carried more power than any $1 million offer ever could, and with that, Geno's humiliation was complete. The gatekeeper of women's basketball, the man who once defined the sport, had been reduced to offering a fortune to the one player he dismissed. And she turned him down flat. Without Clark, Unrivaled lost its magnet, its legitimacy, its credibility. The $1 million contract became less a show of power and more an admission of weakness. Fans laughed. Social media roasted Geno for even thinking she would save him after years of disrespect. The chess match he thought he was playing ended in a single move, and Clark didn't even break a sweat. That's the poetry of it. She didn't need to shout. She didn't need to rage. She didn't even need to acknowledge him. Her silence was the loudest humiliation of all. Because here's the truth, Geno's era is over. His power is gone. And Caitlin Clark didn't just dethrone him, she torched the throne itself. For decades, Geno and the old guard decided who mattered in women's basketball. If you wanted greatness, you had to go through them. But Clark shattered that model. She didn't need UConn's banners. She didn't need Geno's blessing. She built her empire from scratch on her own terms with her own fans. And in rejecting his $1 million offer, she sent a message not just to him, but to the entire establishment. The future belongs to the players, not the gatekeepers. That's why this story stings so deeply for Geno. His biggest mistake wasn't ignoring her as a recruit. His biggest mistake was assuming the sport couldn't grow without him. He thought he was indispensable. Clark proved he was irrelevant. And that rejection wasn't just personal revenge, it was cultural. It marked a shift in power, a warning shot to every coach, executive, and power broker still clinging to the illusion of control. Maybe revenge isn't best served cold. Maybe the sweetest revenge is served quietly with calm finality in the form of one rejection that exposes how desperate your enemy has become. Caitlin Clark didn't just reject a contract. She rejected Geno's system, his authority, his entire worldview. And in doing so, she didn't just win, she changed the game. Do you think Geno deserved it? Or did Clark go too far? Let us know down in the comments. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on all notifications so you never miss the drama unfolding in the world of sports.